You are. All right. We'll now call the City Council special meeting to order, July 11th, 4 p.m. Please rise to the invocation and pledge of allegiance. The invocation given by Deputy Mayor Jim Bernard. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire. Here. Councilmember McCure. Councilmember Taylor. Here. Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We're happy to have our city clerk back. I'm glad she's doing good. At this point, we'd like to introduce our new IT person. You want to introduce yourself?
Matt Bird, I don't know if you do. You do.
Name, address, social security number. No.
Got that email.
Yep.
So Matt Bird, IT specialist for 20 something years in the county. I've done work for small business, for government, for pretty much everybody.
Wow.
Started here in January, late January, so. Something like that. I've known Shelley for years. I've done a lot of work with local government, so.
Well, we're very happy to have you, and we're glad you're going to get it straightened out.
Done a lot of work in it.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks. All right. Only have one thing to talk about tonight, and is the general fund budget discussion. So having said that, we all have our PowerPoints in front of us, hopefully, and Melody will take it away.
Okay, so our budget for fiscal year 22-23 is based on a few factors. The millage rate that I've used is 3.25. We've used the return on investment from the wastewater system, the full 6%. Actually, it's 5.6%. So 1.9 million coming from the water fund into the general fund. There is no cost of living adjustment. There are vacant positions that are budgeted, that are listed there. They're budgeted but not filled. And we had the $508,000 increase in the sheriff's office contract.
Okay.
And Mark, I think you wanted to talk about new positions that were being requested.
Well, first on microphone. First on the PowerPoint you got, I told Dave we'll have no problem filling the public works director because it's $800,000.
That's the first thing I was gonna ask
You
you.
know, she slipped a little bit, but I caught it. Too late, but I caught it. Yeah, this, when we're going over the general fund tonight, and we printed this out especially for those of you who are new on the council, and it's good for all us to, we go through it on the notes, it'll show you where actually some of this money that the city gets to spend on things actually comes from, the taxes and that most citizens or people new here or on council don't realize where all this money, they think it all comes from ad valorem taxes, and that's probably the least of what we get to run our, run your city. With that said, we're at about looking at asking for 13 new positions. Some of these will be in future meetings for solid waste and for water and wastewater. Melly did not put them in there. She does have it worked up what it would cost because we didn't want to put them in there until we get somewhat, approval to go forward or whether you're going to agree to it. But right now we're going to ask for another person in parks. We only have 2 people in parks for all the parks that we deal with. They can't keep up, and a third one would certainly help. We're asking for 3 new street operators, ones that mow and weed whack and do everything at trim trees and that stuff. Right now, the city has 1 facility maintenance tech, Mike Stone, for the entire city, for all the buildings we got. It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. And that guy is running every which way. We're asking for another one hopefully like Mike. And then the chief got with me about the fire department becoming accredited. Probably when I first got here, he brought it up, and I have a lot of knowledge in accreditation of law enforcement. It shares us for law enforcement and corrections. I got to do it for 12 years down there, basically overseeing it. And I think it'd be outstanding if our fire department become accredited. Not a lot of them are. But he would need an administrative assistant, an accreditation manager. I think he has no administrative assistant right now over there. Basically, he has to do it all as a chief, and you're either a boss or you're a worker. You can't be both. So that'd be the other position that we'd be asking for in the general fund. And out of those I mentioned, they all come out of general funds, but the facility maintenance, he's paid out 3 or 4 different areas, obviously because they work all around the city. So
Okay, so I would just ask the chief, this accreditation, is that something that maybe the older firefighters that have been there a long time are already accredited and they're trying to get the new ones, or is no one?
No, so accreditation really is a fire department as a whole.
Okay,
There's no real direct money cost that it does save or anything, but what it does is it takes a business of any kind. Well, let me start by saying, he said there's not many. There are 301 in the whole US that are accredited. There's not very many. But what it does is it takes your fire department, your business, and it makes you sort of look into and answer a bunch of hard questions. It's a 5-year process. This isn't anything that's going to happen overnight. They say on their own website, it's 12 to 15,000 hours of work to do. You got to create a bunch of documents. You have to answer a bunch of questions. Then they come down with a peer review team and look over everything and basically validate all these answers that you've given them. So the sort of simple answer to this is what it gets us is it makes us do a very hard in-depth look at our fire department. And one of the documents we create is a self-assessment guide. Basically, what are we doing and can we do anything better? And generally speaking, the answer is yes, you can do everything a little bit better.
right.
But we don't, in our day-to-day job, have that time to sit back and say this little aspect of, let's just say we get a call and it takes us 2 minutes and 25 seconds to get out the door. We can do that better. How can we do that? Now that's one aspect out of 250 questions that they ask.
Sure.
So this position is basically a position that sits down and gets the time to look into all these of how we can do better on each of these little things. So it should, in general, make our department better overall. It's a hard process to do. It's like I was saying, it's a full-time job on top of my full-time job. That's why we need somebody else to do it. Most departments that are doing it are bigger: Orlando, Tampa, all these. So it just takes so many hours to do.
I see.
That's the reason we would need somebody else to do it if we're gonna cross this bridge.
I see. So you're looking for just basically a secretarial position to help you?
Yeah, I mean, you could start it at that. The idea is an accreditation manager, and that would be their whole job. The difference between a secretary or administrative assistant and accreditation manager would be they would have some kind of skill set, more knowledge. Now, they can come from a school, hospitals, EMS, all these kind of do accreditation. So if they had a little knowledge, it would help. Bare minimum, we're going to need some kind of administrative assistant, and I can kind of guide them on how to do it. Now, they're going to have to go to some classes. All that
Pay
kind of stuff.
scale for that individual?
Well, we're still working that out. Me and David have sat down a little bit and talked about it. We don't really know, but somewhere around 47, I think is what we came up with. David, you remember?
Yeah.
Actually, I moved them into,
I think it was
what was the pay grade? Not the lowest,
80.
the next one, where we have another specialist position.
Somewhere around 50.
Okay. So you said it's 5-year process, so you're looking at a total cost of around $250,000.
And on top of that, there's another 20 to 30 in fees itself to get accredited.
I see.
So we have to pay roughly $1,000 to start the process. Then at around year 4, so this peer team that I was talking about that comes in, we have to pay that team to come in. Those peers are from other fire departments. When you start the accreditation process, you then have to basically say, I am going to give one of my personnel to go to that peer review at some other place. So all these other people that have done it are coming to here, at least 5 of them. We have to pay their hotel, their food, their travel, all that kind of stuff. So in all the fees and everything are about $20,000 right now to do that. When we're done in 5 years, probably gonna be more than that, 25, 30. So yeah, 250 for those 5 years. Now, this isn't the process that stops after 5 years. Once you're accredited, then you have to continue to accredit. Every 3 years, you have to resubmit everything. So this would sort of be a continuing process from here on out. Now, it would be easier. We have all these documents created. Once we get through this process,
Right.
we'll sort of know what's involved and it won't be as hard, but it is a never ending process of trying to get better.
So we're looking at, on a good day, $280,000 worth of total cash outlay over 5 years to get accredited. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, is there $280,000 worth of value that is now getting added is what I'm trying to
Right,
figure.
and there's, like I say, there's not a direct tie into how much money you're gonna get back or benefit from this. It is the basic idea of the department itself will get better.
Right.
Now, I will also just throw out that I have talked about in the past year, having an administrative assistant in general
Mhm.
without having an accreditation manager. Just because of the call volume of all the bills and everything I'm also doing on top of everything. So it's
Right.
not like it's a yes or no. I was already sort of going to ask for somebody else to help.
Mhm.
So it is a undertaking, that's for sure.
Sure.
And you guys have to be on board or it's not going to happen anyway. You guys have to approve all these documents that I create in this process.
Right. So, something that's happening nationwide is you're seeing a lot of, town fire departments go to counties or larger organizations, right? That's kind of the opposite of what this council, at least not necessarily this new council, but previous councils have said, we don't want to do that. We want to stick with Avon Park Fire Department. So in that argument of sticking with Avon Park versus going with a county or a larger organization, does this help our fire department in any way there in that argument of saying that
Well-
we are better, we are providing a higher
Chief,
level of
can I
service?
Sure.
add something? What this does is accreditation, whether it's law enforcement or fire. There's a nation best practices in what a fire department, and that's what there'll be standards that are made. And that's why it takes so long. He's gonna have to write policies and that, and there'll be national standards, not what Avon Park
Right.
or what we steal from Sebring or whatever. They're national standards. And, all I can say is it made the Highlands County Sheriff's Office a whole lot better with the national standards that they use. And is it going to make you money? No, but is it going to give you the best fire department I think you can have, that you follow these? And like he said, it doesn't end. Well, the reason it doesn't end is the easiest part is becoming accredited. Okay, you got all of your standards written up in your general orders. But after the first 3 years, I don't know, in fire and law enforcement, that 3 years, then the assessors come in and prove you're doing it. If it says you do this and you're not doing it, you may not get reaccredited. So
Right.
it's really to say, I've got accredited fire department, and these are the standards they go by. So, again, it's obviously up to you if you want to go that way. I think it's a good idea when the chief brought it to me, and he was happy the city manager liked it, but he's got a little red face on us today. But
At the beach all weekend.
but like he said,
on.
he needs someone for administrative things over there now. I mean,
Yeah.
the size the agency he's got or department he's got over there, and he has nobody doing it. Prior to me getting here, they had Ashley doing both, and you can't do that. Ashley's busy with code enforcement on a daily basis. So
Aside from the assistant, do you see anything else with the fire department changing as far as more staff in the future or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, in this plan, so one of the documents they have to make is a strategic plan, which is
Mhm.
what you guys also have to review. I would like to see us get another person in the next couple of years.
I see.
So I'm looking into, me and another guy over there are working on a grant that should start in around September. I'll
Hmm.
bring you back more information on that. But the idea with that grant is that grant would pay for a couple of those people for 2 years.
Mhm.
Now, this is all something you guys have to acknowledge and agree before we even do this.
Sure.
But if the idea is to get 2 more people on in 2 years, we could start that process now and FEMA will pay for those few people for 2 years
Okay.
with the knowledge that you intend to. Now, doesn't mean you have to. We can apply for that grant and get that grant. And then when 2 years is up, those people that were hired under it would just know, well, my job is secure for 2 years. And then after that, I might not have a job.
Yeah.
That's up to you guys to kind of agree to to continue on, but
Okay.
this would not guarantee we're going to get more people. This doesn't force us to do anything.
Right.
What this does is it forces us to acknowledge where we are and forces us to sit down and make a plan of how to get better. That's the whole process with it. When we decide whatever, we're getting out the door at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I just keep using that one example.
Mhm.
2 minutes and 30 seconds. We have to then write a plan on how we're going to do that one step better. Then from there, when they come back to look at us and review everything, they then say, okay, you wrote here, you were getting out the door in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. This was your plan on doing it. Then they start interviewing. They're here for like 4 to 5 days to do all this. They ask all these people questions. One of those questions is going to be, is the people, the guys getting on the truck, how are you doing this? How are you getting better in this step? And if they don't have some kind of a knowledge of this answer of what we're supposed to be doing to get better, then they may push us off to get accredited. So
I
that's the
see.
whole process, is we have to make a plan on what we're doing and how we're going to get better. And then we have to keep continuing that plan.
Okay.
So the law enforcement is a 3-year process. The fire department is a 5-year process because they can't figure out how to make it any shorter. So it is a longer process.
Yeah.
One of the
But I think it
questions,
will in general just make us a better department. It'll be a long process to get there.
Yeah. Well, it also gives you a quantifiable scorecard basically to see where we are this year versus 5 years from now, 10 years, yeah, so
Right.
on and so forth. So,
one of the questions I would ask you, Chief, I don't know whether you would know this or not, but do you think if we were accredited, would that possibly help people with their homeowners insurance?
No, ISO, so there's kind of 3 things we're working on here. NFPA is the standard that we use for all of our fire rules. You know, you have to have bunker gear to go into a fire. You have to, all this kind of standards that we do. Those are sort of separate than accreditation. ISO is what they rate fire insurance on. They look at the city itself. They look at the fire department, how many people you have on a truck, what are you responding with? They look at the water, which is the fire hydrants, all that kind of stuff, how much water you have coming out. Then they look at dispatch. That's really about it. They do those couple kind of things and then they take all that information. This accreditation is totally separate than all that, and they don't help or hurt each other.
One comment I would like to make, it's nice to have a city manager that's pro fire department. I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Me too.
And a chief.
So I have a question. Are we more at an advantage by becoming accredited to getting the grant? I mean, if we're accredited?
No, that doesn't really help with grants.
Oh,
I mean, it's not going to hurt us with
I mean,
grants.
I didn't know if they favored companies that had, the accreditation more so than ones that didn't.
Well, I haven't seen any that ask that, but what I will say, what it will help is currently when we look into a grant, we have to dig up all this information.
Mhm.
And once we get accredited, all this information will already be documented somewhere. That's kind of the other plus to accreditation is they sort of force you to look into all these things that you do for some reason, but well, we've just done it for 20 years and it seems to work. Well, why are you doing it? Those are some of the questions you have to answer.
Mm.
And then you also have to kind of document why you're doing it and how you're going to do it better, all that kind of. The assessment process is kind of a big process to it, but we're going to get a lot of information out of doing this.
got it. Anything else?
With the accrediting process, do they have set standards? I'm thinking like from the school's perspective, when we do it, they have specific standards of how many people we have to have in each building, how many students and all that kind of stuff. Is that going to affect how many firefighters we have on staff?
Yes and no. So the way it will affect you, what it does is it takes what we have and how we're going to get better. Now, we can, as a city, say we have 4 people on duty all day, every day, and we think that's good, and we don't think we ever need to get better. Now, that's going to be sort of a little fight for them because they're going to come in and say, well, the national standard is 18 people for a house, and you only have 4. Why are you doing that? And then we just sort of have to have something documented saying, well, we're trying to do better, but getting money in our community isn't a big thing, so we don't get a whole lot of money. We have to have some kind of a plan laid out. Now, that plan could be, we're going to hire 1 more person per shift in 10 years.
Mhm.
Or 1 more person in 20 years. So the simple answer is they will ask those questions. And we kind of have to have a plan, but that does not mean that they will hold you to a national standard and say, NFPA requires you to have 15 people in 15 minutes. Where are you getting those 15 people from?
Mhm.
So it does make us get better, but it does not hold us to a certain high standard that we probably won't get to here.
And it will not prevent us from completing the process, not having those people?
No, that was one of my biggest worries.
Okay.
Because when I go to these, I went to a class a couple weeks ago And I'm sitting in there with other departments of, 5, 6 stations, and they're talking about that you have to have 15 people in the first few minutes. And I'm looking at them saying, we will never have 15 people. What does
Right.
that do? And so I got reassured that it will be one of those things that you just have to be able to justify why you can't. We're trying, we have mutual aid agreements with these people, we have mutual aid agreements with these people, and we call people off duty. We try to get everybody we can, but we're not going to get 20 people here in 15 minutes.
Okay.
It will help us build a plan though to do that. That's kind of what I was going at with the, adding another person per shift in the next couple of years, because that will be part of the strategic plan. If we have 4 on right now, currently, you guys have heard me talk about this whole 2 in, 2 out, where we're supposed to, when we go to a fire, if there is, we can break that 2 in, 2 out rule if we think there is life safety inside.
Right.
Other than that, we're supposed to have 2 people inside, and we're supposed to have 2 people outside in case those 2 people inside get hurt. And we're also supposed to have somebody in charge of those 4 people that are running around. Currently, we only have 4 people on duty.
Right.
So I show up, I come off duty to come up here. We page people out to come up. But that would help us get to that 5th person, minimum manning person would get us to that 2 people inside, 2 people outside, and 1 person to watch those 4.
Yeah. In case of a structure fire, which
Correct.
for our community is not an everyday thing, but it does happen somewhat often.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So Chief, back to the firefighter and the administrative assistant. If the council do not include that salary in the budget, every 2 years, we would have to apply for the grant. Every 2 years, if we want them to stay, pretty much.
Well, yeah, but I think the general answer would be you would not get it every 2 years.
Okay.
They're not going to give it to you back to back to back.
How
so-
often you get it?
I don't know of anybody that's, I mean, I think you could apply for it and then probably skip a year and then they'll probably look at you again.
Oh,
But I don't think their intention is not for you to retain people for 6, 8 years with their grant funding. They're going to look at other people. They're going to say, well, you got it for 2 years. Let's look at 20 other departments to give it to.
okay, so their intention is pretty much, let's let them get it to see what difference it makes in the department and let them decide whether, they want it.
Well, I think that's one way to look at it, but I think their real intention is they know they have a problem. They need more people. Let's help them get those people there earlier.
Okay.
So we're gonna fill in the gap for a couple of years until the city or county can figure out how to get funds together to do that.
Good answer.
Okay.
Yep. I blame myself for opening this can of worms, but we have a lot of material to get through, so let's try
Keep
to
going.
keep going. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we circle back around to the new staff requests, that amount's going to be for the general fund about $255,000. In order to balance the budget with that number, without capital outlay requests, our millage rate would have to be increased to 3.6644. And that would make us break even.
That's if we filled all positions, correct?
Correct.
Well, one question I have for the city manager is, then how do you feel about us filling those positions when we're still short-handed, trying to get people to positions that are available now, as far as the future?
Actually, right now, we're down to budget manager, which would. Right now, we're only down to budget manager, which really wouldn't have anything to do with these ones, the public works director, solid waste supervisor, but right now, we're only down 1 in streets, the ones that the operators mowing, and 1 C&D and 1 water wastewater operator. So we've actually, over the past 2 months, anyways, we had a lot of people putting in at one time. We don't know why, but they did. Then David just told me this morning it's kind of dried up and no one else seems to be putting in, but it does seem that people are starting to come back to work. The free checks are getting cut off, so they're trying to find a place to work. So I think we'll fill them. David said when we were getting them, he's getting a lot of ones for mowing, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would also like to point out that our general fund has approximately $4 million in reserves, which is I think 4.5 months. It's recommended that we have 3.3 months. The return on investment that's coming from the water wastewater, we're recommending we take 1.9 million. The water sewer fund has 11 million in reserves, which is about 4 years worth of reserves. But taking the 1.9, we're actually going to be hitting the reserve because the water sewer fund is only, their net income this year is projected at 1.5. So we would actually be taking 400,000 out of the reserve.
You're drawing it down 400,000.
Yep.
Okay.
So our general fund is made up of several types of revenues. We have several different types of taxes. We have permits. We have intergovernmental revenues. We have fines and forfeitures, charges for services, and of course, our return on investment. Our total general fund revenues are projected to come in at approximately 7.6 million.
Melanie, what falls under miscellaneous?
There are several things in miscellaneous, and once we get into that category, I'll show you what's in there if you want, if you can wait. This slide is just a presentation of what each one of those revenues comes in and the percentage it comes in at.
Okay.
Our taxable value has increased to 371 million. It's an increase of 28 million over last year. Our ad valorem millage rate, this is just a graph that shows how it's increased over the last couple of years. And of course, our ad valorem tax revenue is based on the taxable value and the millage rate. So this year it would increase 435,000 if we went with the 3.25 mil. The next slide is a millage rate history of the municipalities in Highlands County. As you can see, we are way below the other two municipalities. It dropped more than 5 mils in 2013.
Okay.
Sales and use tax is made up of local option gas taxes and fire insurance premium tax, and that's projected at 440,000. And the local option gas tax makes up the majority of that. Local option gas taxes are projected at 400,000. It's an increase of 10,000 over last year. Fire insurance premium is budgeted same at 40. We no longer have the casualty insurance premium tax for the police pension. Franchise fees is made up of electric and gas franchise fees, and that comes in at 640,000, which is 10,000 over last year. And the electric franchise tax makes up the most, the majority of that revenue. Electric franchise fees come in at 630,000. That's an increase of 10 over last year. And gas franchise fees remains the same at 17. Utility service taxes include electric, water, gas, and communication service tax. That is projected at almost 1.2 million. It's an increase of 30,000 over last year. And the electric utility tax makes up the majority of that revenue.
You can hold on one second.
Yep.
The electric franchise fees,
Mhm.
obviously they're established by agreement between us and the service provider. Do you know what the actual rate is and what the surrounding cities are?
It's Does it say on here?
It doesn't say what it actually is on
I
here.
can look that up. I want to say it's almost 10%, I think.
10%.
I think so, yeah. I
Okay.
have to look.
Is
up.
it public record what all the other cities are?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I would just be curious to see where we stand with the other surrounding communities. At almost half of our ad valorem value, it's a significant number.
Okay, I'll bring that back at the next meeting. Water utility tax is budgeted at 135,000, which is an increase of 5,000 over last year. Gas utility tax, 23,000. That's actually a decrease over last year of 2,000. Communication service tax is budgeted at 230,000. It's an increase of 22,000. Local business tax remains the same at 28,000. Licenses, permits, and fees remains the same at 2,500. Intergovernmental revenues is budgeted at 1.4 million and includes sales tax, mobile home fees, revenue sharing, our DOT contracts, and Highlands County Recreation interlocal agreement. And half-cent sales tax makes up the majority of that revenue stream.
The rental home fees for
Mobile home.
apartments and things. I see on here, it just has mobile home, but as far as there's a fee paid by people who rent out homes and apartments and things like that. Where does that money go?
So that would be business tax.
Business tax.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's in business tax. Mobile home fee is just the fee that you pay.
Right.
Mhm. Half-cent sales tax is budgeted at 700,000. So $40,000 increase over last year. 8-cent sales tax is budgeted at 118. That's $18,000 increase over last year. Mobile home fees, 4,340 remains the same as last year. Alcoholic beverage tax license is budgeted at 8,500. It's a $500 increase over last year. Revenue sharing is budgeted at $416,600. It's an increase of $65,600. Firefighter supplemental compensation is budgeted at 1,500. That's a decrease of 500. DOT highway lighting contract, 81,180. It's an increase of 12,310. The DOT mowing contract, 38,650. It's an increase of 1,150. Highlands County Recreation Grant remains the same at 110,000. Charges for services include zoning fees, fire inspections, fire assessment fee, code enforcement fines, and rental fees. Zoning fees is projected at 4,000. That's a $1,000 decrease. Fire inspections is budgeted at 1,150. It's a $200 increase. Fire assessment fees remains the same at $666,270. Code enforcement fees is budgeted at 15,000. It remains the same as last year. Rental fees, it's budgeted at $770. It's a $380 decrease. Fines and forfeitures consists of court fines, public education funds, and restitution. That comes in at a total of $16,600. Court fines remains the same at $15,000. Police education funds decreased $200 to $1,000. Restitution increased $100 to $600. And other miscellaneous revenues includes interest, rental of the government buildings, and other miscellaneous revenues, which could be insurance premiums and that kind of thing. They come in at $80,600, and our return on investment, again, is 1.9 million. So our interest income is budgeted at 400,000, which we all know interest rates have plummeted over the last several years. Rental of government buildings is budgeted at 76,200. It's an increase of 10,000 over last year. Miscellaneous revenues is budgeted at 4,000, an increase of 2,000. And return on investment is budgeted at 1.9 million. That's a $700,000 increase. And that's the end of revenues. Any questions?
Any questions for him?
Too fast for me.
Want me to go back? Bernice, did I answer your
did.
question on the miscellaneous?
All right, if there's no questions, we'll continue on.
So our general fund is made up of 4 separate departments. You have your general government, which basically includes all of the administration departments, public safety, which is your fire, code, and police, transportation department, and your culture and recreations, which is parks and rec. And that the total general fund expenses are budgeted at 7.5 million. And public safety makes up, I think that says 60%.
69%.
69%. Total general government includes 5 different departments. That's city council, the city manager, the finance department, the city attorney, and other governmental services. Total expenses for general government are budgeted at 942,000. And the city manager department makes up more than 52% of that.
I have one question on the city attorney. A lot of those expenses, I believe, were due to the airport project. And no,
Mm-mm.
none of his.
No, it's his retainer. Right, what else?
It's whatever he bills us for. There's some on there. Anything to do with the airport is marked on there, but Jerry doesn't have a real lot to do. When we first started, yeah. And then there's just some times that our outside counsel is not certified in Florida, that he has to rely on Jerry for Florida State Statute, but Jerry hasn't, I don't think he's here recently. He hasn't charged much of anything because he hasn't even been involved in it.
Mhm.
Yeah, the only time it's changed, if you remember years ago, Jerry we were in a lot of lawsuits, the city was, and so he was, he had rates that were 200,000, 220,000, 230,000. This is probably 2012 to 2015-ish. But since then, it's been relatively the same. I don't think that his rate has actually changed in the past
No,
His rate did, it went up last year.
7 or 8 years. Will it?
I think we increased it last year. or this
Yeah,
year.
he increased it last year.
Mhm.
Small amount,
But again, I mean, every time he does ordinances or, whatever he's doing,
Well,
so.
Right.
That's the problem, is we've been busy up here.
Yeah, I mean,
And we
it's,
put him to work.
But even so, as far as his time, it stays pretty steady.
right.
Unless he's having to go do depositions and things like that. That's
Good for me.
Okay, so city council department is budgeted at 75,000, which is an increase of 5,200 over last year. And you should see each individual line item, how it increased and how it decreased. I'm going to go over each line item.
I don't think that's necessary.
So that total department increased by $9,500. City manager department is budgeted at $492,230, which is an increase of $58,390.
And the big change there is due to,
There's several things. During the process last year, David and I discovered that a lot of employees' salaries weren't being allocated to the proper department, so we've changed that around a lot. We have the insurance increased, the health insurance by 15%. That's a factor, and the FRS employee the city contribution increased too, based on the salary allocations.
yeah. So the salary allocations before, were they shifted to like something in infrastructure or something like that to try to pull it off of the general fund? Is that,
No, it would have been into water, sewer, or sanitation,
I see.
right, David? There were several sanitation workers that were,
Correct. And on this slide, also, you notice that executive salaries and regular salaries, a lot of the subsets, 11, a lot of people were in the subset 11, which is why last year was at a 213,000. When really the only people that should be in that is city council and the city manager. So a lot of those swap places, but it actually is almost exactly dollar for dollar if you add the two columns or the
I
two
see.
rows together.
Yeah.
It was just misallocation as to why it was there.
Got it.
Melanie, the other contractual service, what is that?
yes, ma'am, let me get there and I'll. So that is our support, our annual support for our software. And that increased because that was also allocated to several different departments. So we moved that around also.
And Melody, in the city manager, can you tell them who's paid out of there? Like the city clerk is all paid out of there.
The city clerk, the budget manager, the IT administrator, the administrative administrator, David.
Yeah.
This is the executive? Which one is this?
This is city manager.
City manager.
Yeah, it's a little misleading. It sounds like it's the city manager, but there's a lot of other, it's not broken.
You gotta make sure you clarify that, right?
No, because in most you look at, you would have HR would have their own. They wouldn't be
Right.
under the city manager, but you know, just in the third year doing this, we're slowly getting to how it really should be broken off. Just doesn't, it looks like the city manager's budget's huge, but it includes a lot of other salaries
see.
and benefits.
Yep.
Any other questions on the city manager?
Mm-mm.
Finance department is budgeted at 38,000. That's $130,000 less than last year. And this again, David can help explain. It has a lot to do with the way the salaries are allocated.
A lot of the finance personnel previously were either categorized in one area, whereas now we're taking all four of the finance personnel when the budget manager finally comes on, and they're split between all the departments and have different percentages for each one. So
And the three top operating costs, the professional services, accounting and auditing, and CPA services. Instead of breaking those out into department, we've allocated those to just general government and then water, sewer, and sanitation. So it's not spread out throughout each individual department. And also the accounting and CPA services reduced because we hired a new CPA service, and the accounting and auditing would have stayed the same as far as that goes, but
Melanie, what is that note number 2 on the bottom right? On that page, next to 129,640.
oh, that's page number 12 or whatever, 62. It's just cut off the
Okay,
page number.
all right. Oh, now I see. Yep.
Any other questions? The city attorney remains the same at $147,090. And here his fees, you can see where they're broken out, Vice Mayor, for professional services, legal services, and other. Other governmental services is budgeted at $189,290, which is a decrease of $9,450. Other contractual services decreased due to we no longer utilize the services of Sebring Computers because now we have our IT administrator on staff. Public safety includes police, fire, code, and planning and zoning, and their budget comes in at $5,174,550. That's an increase of $775,950. $508,000 of that is due to the increase in the sheriff's office contract. And police makes up the majority of public safety expense.
Who is the planning and zoning department?
That would be CFRPC fees.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So as far as the police or sheriff, this is the last increase other than the annual, what, 3%? I believe that was agreed to after this year.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct, and unless they can find people to hire, we won't be spending that much unless overnight they're having a hard time like every other law enforcement agency to hire people,
so
so.
we don't have the full 8 people increase, 4 sergeant, 4.
Well, that's what it'll go up to this year, the 2 more sergeants and 2 deputies, but we still only have 1 sergeant because they can't find enough people to hire to promote someone to sergeant, so they prorate us. We don't pay the whole thing.
Okay.
We're just paying on the actual deputies that are up there.
Okay. But as far as the vehicle, are we still paying for the vehicle increases also, not the people?
No, we'll only pay for the vehicles if they actually have deputies to man them.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, this has nothing to do with the budget, but Mark, since we was on the police, how many do we have per shift?
There's 12 hours during the day shift, there's 2 on, and then they work 6 to 6. So 6 at night to 6 in the morning, there's 3 of them on, and that's when the sergeant's on. If they're able to hire, then there'll be a sergeant and 3 people on 24 hours a day, 365.
All right, thanks.
The fire department budget comes in at $2,053,490. It's an increase of $64,920 over last year. And again, a lot of that has to do with the health insurance increased
On the police?
On the
No,
fire.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn the page.
Under the operating cost, again, the other contractual services decrease, that's Sebring Computer again. The decrease in the firefighter cancer insurance, last year we had budgeted the $25,000 one-time payout, but that's actually paid by the insurance company, not by the city. Any other questions? Code enforcement is budgeted at $436,350. That's an increase of $125,510. Their salaries increased by 10,000. Personnel expenses increased by 16. The majority of the increases in professional fees and demolition repairs. Any questions?
What did you say, the professional fees, 41,000 increase?
Yeah, that we added. Yeah, so professional fees, we increased the special magistrate by about 3,000, and we added 20 foreclosures at $1,000 each. So
Oh.
that's an additional, no, that's wrong.
Okay.
It's a $50,000 increase there.
Per council's request.
Mhm.
So there, Ms. Melanie, there is no executive salary? Just regular salary?
Just, yes, ma'am. And then the other, the demolition repairs was increased by 62,000. We put in for 5 demolitions, and that includes asbestos mediation and demolition. But I think we may see if the CRA can pay for some of that, so that cost may be shifted into the CRA.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Planning and zoning is budgeted at 38,500. That's the same as last year. The street department is budgeted at 918,420. That's an increase of 355,190. That's due to, again, the shifting of salaries. And the increase in our health insurance. And retirement, FRS increases based on the salary.
Sometimes it hurts when you shift them and sometimes it's better, but
Yep,
it really hurts when you shift more into one department.
that's right.
So these funds that we're shifting a lot of the stuff out of, are they ended up with a surplus now, or are they breaking even this year?
Well, you see some of them increase. We're going to see a bigger difference when we get into the water and sewer fund and the sanitation fund. You'll see those decreased a
Okay.
little bit.
And on the shift, they were paying people who mow the lawns and that out of sanitation.
Right.
Well, they shouldn't be paid out of sanitation. And go back a few years ago, they were all grouped in one. And one day you were riding the back garbage truck, next day you're mowing. So, okay, but we can't continue to pay for someone mowing our lawns out of solid waste.
Right.
No, I'm grateful for the fact that you're doing this the way you are. It's a lot easier to follow. It makes perfect sense. It doesn't look like somebody trying to hide something. So it makes it a lot more simpler for us simple folks.
So this is the final department. We have culture and recreation, and that's made up of parks, culture, recreation, and the community center. And that's budgeted at 465,960. And the Parks Department makes up 70% of that expense. Parks Department is budgeted at $323,570. That's a decrease of $89,830. And you can see that some of the salaries were shifted out of this department. So personnel costs actually decreased 46,000. And again, the other contractual services, that is Sebring Computer. Actually, I think that's not all Sebring Computer. That was, we had money budgeted in there for mall maintenance last year. That is not needed this year because we have 2 new employees that's all they do. Small maintenance.
It was for the contract. We didn't go to contract.
Correct. Culture and Recreation is budgeted at 12,000. That remains the same as last year. And those are donations that we make to the Boys and Girls Club and that kind of thing. The Recreation Department comes in at $96,690. It's an increase of $8,020. 3,700 of that is in personnel costs and 15,000 is in operating costs. Most of that is the property insurance increased 15%. Community Center is budgeted at 33,700. That's an increase of 4,380. That's it. That's the end of the presentation.
Now for an hour of questions.
All for Melody.
Anybody have any questions on the budget so far?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It doesn't really pertain to the budget, but are the offices that are at City Hall and the fire department, are they paperless?
No, I don't. I think we're trying to go that way. David would love it to be paperless.
We're far from paperless.
I mean, is that something that we've ever checked into doing? Because I mean, that cut off a lot of.
If only we had an IT guy here to help us.
It'll take us a few years to get paperless. It appears to me in the past several years here, no one's looked at that. I mean, we work off Word and Excel and yeah.
So I mean, realistically, what would it take to go paperless? Is this like a overhaul of equipment or just strictly?
May I
thinking?
answer that question,
Please.
Senator?
Okay.
It actually, when you start this process, you're looking at probably 3 to 5 years. The first step of this is if we get the appropriate software, hopefully the next council meeting, bring that up, that turns everything electronic so that we have less paper that we have to produce. And then taking all the current paper blueprints, everything we've got that potentially could be destroyed in a fire or flood right now, making it electronic to either store in the cloud or with Matt on servers or dual purposes, one way or another, for easier access to say, where is document X? Mark's famous words of, where do I find this? And go, I don't check. Could be anywhere in this building. But to try and do that, I mean, it just takes a lot of time to do. And having been in that process with the federal government under the Al Gore administration saying, we will go paperless, it was 10 years for that to happen because you have to take all the documents of every department and scan them in just for that reason and have secure electronic, storage facilities just for that purpose in multiple locations in case one is hacked or destroyed, you still have other backups. And that's where, we are having the discussion with Matt and doing other things to get to that point. But as far as personnel coming in, whether they're interim college students that all they do is scan, it's setting up here's the structure, here's how you're going to do this, here's the different departments and everything. You would need people that's all they would do is just scan in the different departments all the time and make these records in there, but it is a year process to get it done.
It's,
So-
if I can add to that, but when I was at the sheriff's office, we did it, and I'm with David, how long it takes, but it's needed. And I've got with Matt, and I think the biggest reason is for the last 17 years, had IT from outside, not in-house, and he was building his own computers. And that's why I would like to, I'm gonna bring it probably in the next meeting, if Matt can get it worked up. I'd like to get your blessing to use American Rescue funds to actually get Dell computers that have warranties. Our computers go down pretty much every day, right, Matt? And our servers right now, I wouldn't trust. In fact, I stopped them when I got here. Tim was scanning stuff. Well, we don't even know where a lot of the records are now. So you just don't want to start scanning them. It actually has to be set up where you got a server that's backed up. And when you scan them, you've got to set up a protocol so that it isn't just the city clerk who can find stuff. It's any of us. It makes sense where stuff's going. So,
Yeah.
like I said, probably next meeting, if Matt can get it worked up, I want to bring to you, request use of American Rescue funds because we're way behind on our computers. I don't even, they're not even a brand. We just throwing together pieces. It's ridiculous. It's been like this in the city for years and years. And, well, we had a IT guy that worked 17 years, never under contract or an agreement. So Matt's got a lot to do, but our biggest thing is our servers, and we're still, we ended up, it did close when we got hit by ransomware. That actually was, that they closed that case, but Matt's still being hit up by, I don't know, recently, but by auditors to make sure that, now we've actually got a backup, and it takes changing passwords and training and all that, but it is needed. To me, it's one of the biggest things we need here is actual good servers and computers. And if you want, Matt can add to that on what he's saying, but it certainly be money well spent because call it central records, but public records are a huge thing when someone comes looking for them, and you got to say, we're unable to locate it. As David said, right now, I can't find half of the agreements or contracts we have by vendors that they've been using in the city for years. So I've actually had to call them and ask it, a little embarrassing, but do you have a copy I can get from them? So.
Christian, you have something?
Yeah, I've come across this problem before where I was at, and kind of to combat it, since we're in this in between, is I created a database, and I am scanning records as well as retaining the hard copies, just for that eventuality that we will transfer into electronic. So it's a very slow process, just given everything that we do in a day, but it is being worked on, not as quickly as I would like it to be, but it is definitely a priority. I just wanted to reassure you that we are doing that on our end.
I can remember on several occasions where the city has hired shredding companies to come shred who knows how many documents. So I wonder if all those got kept somewhere.
Well, actually, as soon as we can free her up from her other duties, that's a big thing that we've got to do. We've got records down there that should have been gone years ago, many years ago that are down there. When retention runs, you get rid of them. If you don't, then you got to produce them. But boxes that are labeled down there, we don't know for sure if that's what's in it. Whoever set them up probably did a good job, but through the years, as people came and went, they just said, well, let's stick something in that box. So we don't know whether it needs to be retained or not. But
So you gotta go through each and every one to make sure.
We look forward to seeing what the IT guy has to say at our next meeting.
So I got a question for David. So David, it is something that you and Mark has entertained? Paperless, y'all have entertained it?
Oh, I did for probably 7 years.
No, I'm talking about here, the city. I'm asking. Is it?
We have entertained it and started to look into it, which is kind of that was kind of the whole idea with the new council coming on to go to the iPads and everything because of and I don't remember how many meetings back where between the city clerk, Mark, and 2 other people, they were printing these 600, 700, 800 page books to be picked up on Thursday and shredded on Tuesday. Going, think about all the money that we're wasting here on effort and everything else, whereas Adobe things or PDFs, you're making in an hour or two, sending them out and they're done. And if you have to change it, like with Melody's presentation, you change it, it's done. You don't have to spend time doing it all over again. Plus, you still have the electronic copy in the computer. If somebody says, do you still have X? You still have it. So it's easier to retain and bring up that way.
So it is something that you and Mark, and I'm even asking Melanie, if this is something that y'all would like to see happen.
Oh, I think all four of us at this bench would like to see it. Yeah.
See, currently, we don't even, we should, and Matt, I'm going to talk like a layman because I am when it comes to computers. We should have a main server that when I work on my computer sitting at my desk, nothing is on my computer at my desk. It all goes to the main computer. That way I can get up and walk in Melody's office and get on hers and I'm on it. Right now, I honestly don't know where stuff's saved. I know that just this morning, the city clerk called Mac because hers were acting up. We found out that Kim was saving a bunch of stuff on her desktop where, I mean, how much? 4,000 files, nothing gets, she didn't know where, you know, no one told her that this should be there. That's why we have such a hard time finding things. And, you know, you think, well, there'll be backup hard copies. Well, there are since she's got here, and there's some from, I mean, there's some people been here before that have tried it, but they haven't been here long enough or haven't got the backup to do it. And really what it comes down to here is, yeah, we'd love to do it. I mean, we're way behind. Not to say other cities aren't way behind. When I was working up doing consultant work in Alachua County, they were still working on spreadsheets. I'm like, what? You know, it's Alachua County. So even the big ones are behind us. So we're for it, but it takes money to get there by servers and computers and kind of high-speed scanners, not cheap ones. Like David said, when you're scanning, Eileen goes about the sheriff's office because they pretty much paperless. Rob Jordan brought them there years ago. When you put it in, it zip, it's there. Yep, it is. Now they can get rid of that. You don't have to hang on it once it's put in there. So we will bring something hopefully to the, not the next council meeting, that's at 6, but the one in 2 weeks
So
after
my
that.
last question, does Sebring and Lake Wyson have it?
I don't know, but we're better than them, so we're gonna be ahead of them.
So I just wanted to see.
I honestly don't know
where
what they're
we
working on.
stood, you know, when it came to them two, because, you know, we are in the same county, so I was just curious.
There's when I was in law enforcement, you think like back when I was with the sheriff's office, when we were dealing with things going on in the Avon Park PD, I remember we were on the call with FDLE and they said, you'd be surprised at small places that are like this. And that kind of goes back into the accreditation. If you'd had accredited law enforcement agency, you probably still have one today because they would have had to, they were working on 1970s policies that only 2 people in the agency had, because when I came up here, when you relieved your police chief, I asked for them. They said, well, there's one copy in the police and the chief's office, and one of the FTOs has, we don't go by them. They're from the 1970s, which you can't do when you're an accredited agency. You're made to abide by it and keep it up. So that's my biggest thing on that. So.
Well, I think we need to invest in the equipment first. Create training for the other employees who aren't really, you know, ready to come into that off paperless. It's a big change. It's a nice change, but for people who aren't used to, you know, change, it's kind of hard. And then maybe create a jump off point where we're from here on out, this gets scanned to here. Let's not scan this and put it back over here in this file for later, because why? You already made a copy. You have it saved. This is no good anymore.
We agree, and that's why you have to limit the amount of people that can scan, so the ones know where it is. But yes, I agree. You scan it, it's in there, you see it, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the budget?
Are we gonna look into the fact about the CRA looking into hire somebody to do a couple different jobs? One would be some of the jobs that would help out with Chrissy, her position.
Actually, we're talking about that Thursday night advisory board meeting. That's on their agenda to talk about.
Okay.
No, their whole budget is actually to recommend to you.
All right, anything else for the budget? Seeing none, obviously, you know, the council have the ability to ask any questions they want to in between our meetings. So I would encourage everybody, as you think about things, just put it in an email or something. That way you don't lose the thought and get your questions answered. So.
All right, are we gonna get any more paperwork like this in the future for a budget?
You'll have about 6 more funds coming before you.
Yeah, you mean print it off?
Yes,
Yes, sir. We'll do
okay.
Okay.
Then I know I won't download it. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
But if you download it, you can replace it. That way they don't have to print more paper. Paperless.
Okay,
Thank you.
I wasn't gonna point it out, but okay. Anything else for the good of the city? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Now you can rag him all you